in the house.
Hey, hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rubberducky. How about yourself?
I'm tired, to be honest. So I don't know how long our live's going to go. Had to work today. But after watching your video, it was quite impressive. So I'm excited that you're going to answer some Q&A.
No, thank you very much, Rubberducky. Pleasure to be here.
BB,
Yay.
we got
Right
the
here.
bumblebee in the house.
Hey, hey.
All right. So I think we have 3 or 4 people on with us. I'm sure a lot of people are just watching the video. I'm going to throw on my glasses for a minute so I can see you people because I can't read without them. I can drive fine. I can do dishes, but I cannot read. All right. Hey, Mary, Mary. Mary, Mary's with us. What time is it there, Mary, Mary? There's always a delay. I wonder why that is.
Yeah,
Why
there,
does why
there
does it
does tend to
lag?
be a delay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
I can't stand to watch it. I see myself, after the fact, like a minute later. I'm like, no. Okay. So, Dr. Silkman, after watching the video on Christine Rudy as well as the Teresa Halbach comparison that you did, I
Yes.
guess the biggest question we want to know is why does it all look like, how do I put this? It looks like the same MO for the killer, but from what you said in the video, it's not the
Yeah.
same person.
Yeah. I think what struck me when I was reading the cases, I knew absolutely nothing about the Christine Rudy case. My main focus, of course, was on the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey case. But when I read a little bit about the Christine Rudy case and the fact that I could find nothing on YouTube, which was a real surprise about Christine Rudy, I became very curious. I read a few Reddit posts that were making comments about the mitochondrial DNA results. I thought, okay, I'll do a little bit of reading and a bit of research. And what struck me, Rubberducky, was the shocking similarity in terms of the MO between the deaths of both victims, of both Teresa and Christine. And I thought, oh my God, this is very, very similar. Then I found out that the locations where the murders took place were not too far apart.
Right.
And it concerned me a real lot. And I started thinking of a potential link, maybe even a potential serial killer here. I had to look at this case,
Yeah.
especially at a DNA level. And there were results, mitochondrial DNA results that were published by the FBI. So I went in there and I looked at them, and they were very interesting, of course.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that on a DNA standard, we were able to compare apples to apples because you've taught us enough
Yeah,
to understand that. Now, I'm probably going to say it wrong,
that's all right.
but the same method, the same kit was used in both DNA tests, both Christine and Teresa's. The
Yeah.
primer was the same.
Yeah, so essentially with the mitochondrial DNA analysis, that's completely separate to genomic DNA testing. But you've got to understand that it's the same era, same time frame, done by the same individuals, by the
Perfect
FBI.
comparison then.
Yeah, so in other words, it's not like the Stephen Avery case where we were looking at results from 1996 to 2005. That was very interesting. So here we're looking at apples per apples, so we can do a
Okay.
direct comparison. And that was really interesting.
Do you want to get the Easter egg out of the room and let's talk about the Stephen Avery 1996 versus 2005 DNA real quick before we get into the other?
Yeah, I love to. do you just want me to just
Yeah,
quickly
just kind of
elaborate?
walk us through it a
Yeah,
little bit in just a
yeah,
quick summary.
yeah,
And that way we have plenty of time to
yeah.
work into how you compared the Teresa Halbach and I almost said Carmen Boutwell. See, the
Yeah,
Christine Rudy
yeah.
case, where you have both of their DNA result, their mitochondrial, right?
Mitochondrial. Yeah. So just let me elaborate. Now, I go through this in the video very slowly, very deliberately. But essentially, as you know, there were PCR genomic DNA results that were done in 2005. They're all done by Cherie Culhane. We're looking at the Stephen Avery case at the moment. They're all done by Cherie Culhane. She used the same PCR amplification kit, same set of primers. And the important thing to realize is that the results are computer generated, which means that you don't have to visually interpret the results. The computer is going to be very, very accurate. Because they were all done at the same time, we can easily compare the profiles of both Dolores, Alan, and Stephen. The good thing is, Rubberducky, we have a full genomic profile of both the mother, the father, and Stephen. So we know exactly what type of alleles Stephen is going to have because we can have a look at the mum, we can look at the father, we can make a prediction of what alleles Stephen should have. So
Right.
far, so good, Rubberducky?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So in 2005, a full genomic profile was done. They looked at all the loci, everything came up, nothing nefarious, nothing wrong. It was beautiful. However, the controversy was when the genomic DNA results were done in 1996. Now, the reason why they're controversial for a start is that you got to remember that only 3 alleles were looked at. Only 3.
Why is that?
In 1996, the genomic DNA profiling was pretty, what can I say, embryonic. It was very, very early on in the piece.
Okay.
And so what they
So
wanted,
we've upgraded
oh,
since then.
completely, completely. There are new standards, there are new kits, there are new primers, and the FBI now is demanding, I believe it's 20 loci.
Yeah,
So back in 1996, only 3 loci were done, THO1, CSF1PO, and TPOX. But
right.
really, Rubberducky, the question that was being asked was, hey, do the fingernail scrapings of Penny, do they contain alleles which are different to Stephen Avery? Yeah? That's the question that was being
Yeah.
asked. Are there unknown alleles present in the fingernail scrapings? Because remember, Penny said, hey, I attacked my attacker, I scratched him, I did this, I did that. So they would have taken the fingernail scrapings of Penny, and then in 1996, they did these DNA results.
Now I have a
And
question
of
if you
course,
would.
of
All
course,
right. So there's been times when I've suggested something nefarious that at the time you kind of felt like maybe you needed to rely on the paperwork and therefore based on what you saw as a scientist you could come to a result. And
yeah,
then later you got to know who Eisenberg is. Hold on, I'm going to help Gretchen on the bed. You
no
got to
problems at all.
know who Eisenberg was, and you got to know who Culhane is. And now I have a question. Knowing what you know, do you have any concerns that they actually did have, I don't know, someone? I mean, we're only talking 3 alleles. It could have been half the planet, right?
3 alleles is not going to be distinguishing enough. But
Okay.
Rubber
Well,
Ducky, you
that's
must
because like
understand.
7
Yeah,
with the Teresa and the mother mitochondrial
yeah,
isn't enough. Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, if it was, let's just say it was actually Gregory Allen's.
Hmm.
Him and Stephen could easily share 2 alleles, correct?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. In
So, I
fact,
mean, it's
if
not that we're going
yeah,
to know either way, right?
no, but that wasn't the question being asked, though. The
I know.
question
I
is,
just
yeah.
had my own
Oh, no,
question.
you're 100% correct. In fact, you'd be laughed at if you're trying to get a definitive result with 3 loci. You just
Right.
simply couldn't get away with that now. You've got to have at least 20. But back then, Rubberducky, what they were asking was this: are there alleles that don't belong to Stephen and don't belong to Penny? And believe it or not, there were.
In the fingernail
Yeah.
scrapings?
Oh, yeah, there were. There was an allele that didn't belong to Stephen, didn't belong to Penny, but guess what?
What?
The judge was not prepared to take a call on that result.
What do you mean a
And
call? Like make a
basically,
call?
oh, no, no, no. Basically say, Stephen, you're not the attacker. The
Oh.
judge basically said, well, yes, there is this different allele, but wait for it. Penny could have got it by touching her husband or touching one of the rescuers, etc., etc. So there was an
Wouldn't they
element of
have
doubt.
scratches on them?
Not necessarily. The thing is, with
If she
contact
itched their
DNA.
back for them.
Look,
Oh,
I agree, guys.
sorry, baby. Oh.
I mean, I agree. It sounds ridiculous, but at the end of the day, it was the judge that made that call. And so, unfortunately, Stephen had to go back to prison again in 1996 and remain there. But remember, the genomic profiles that were obtained in 1996, yes, they weren't that definitive, but that's not what the controversy was. The
Okay.
controversy was, if I can elaborate
Please
a little
do.
bit?
Please do.
Yeah, yeah. The issue being is that if you look at the 1996 results and you compare them to the 2005 results, only one locus was a perfect match between 1996 and 2005. That was for TPOX, but the other 2 loci that were looked at, there were differences. So everyone was thinking, oh, okay, did they swap bloods or did something nefarious go on? How come the allele results are not the same? So hence the controversy. I know that's a lot to take in, but what I do in the video is I go through it systematically to show you what actually took place in
Yeah.
1996.
After watching the video, my personal take is that it was basically a very rudimentary system that could only produce a range very close to the number. Whereas as we got into 2005 versus 1996, we've upgraded so much that there's more specific
Yeah,
computerized information. And so
yeah,
we're doing analysis versus where we're
yeah,
guessing how, it's kind of like if you had to guess how many inches the wall was, that's your
yeah,
1996 thing, use a
yeah,
tape measure. But then in 2019, we could actually roll this thing across there that would tell us
yeah.
digitally, and it'd be down
That's
to
right.
the 0.39,
That's
blah,
right.
blah, blah.
That's right. When I first looked at these results, if I can just elaborate for a
Yes,
minute,
please.
in 2005, we're looking at the TH01 locus. In 2005, Stephen Avery was definitely a 9.3. In 1996, a 10 came up. So it's a different allele. And I thought, uh-oh, there's something funny going on here. So what I did is I went right back to the governmental website where they publish the primers that are used as well as the allele sizes. And to my surprise, there are many different sets of primers that have been used throughout the years. So Cherie Culhane used a specific set of primers and a specific amplification kit, which definitely would have been different in 1996. And guess what? Even though the allele sizes are different, they're different by one base, one, which means that's the smallest DNA difference you can have. And I remember when I was doing my PhD, we used to look at gels, we used to look at autoradiographs by eye. And if you have to estimate a length of a polymorphism, you could never be 100% accurate. And you're not going to be able to tell a difference of one nucleotide. So that error there is totally understandable. It's just that they didn't have the degree of resolution.
So that was nothing nefarious.
Nothing whatsoever.
So that was nothing nefarious then
Nothing.
by Sherry
Nothing.
Cohen.
No, Sherry Cohen got the results spot on, because if we have a look at THO1, Dolores is 9.3, Alan is 9.3. That means that Stephen can only be 9.3.
9.3.
Yeah, and so in 1996 we get a 10, which means that if you look at the difference between both alleles, it's one nucleotide, which means that's totally
And she would have been looking with her
understandable.
eyes. And she would have been looking with her eyes.
Whoever did, well, apparently.
Well, and she probably had a lot of hair in her eyes, so I don't know if she
Or
could have read it that
hairspray.
good.
Yeah. Whatever it was, I don't believe that Cherie Cohen actually did the 1996 results. I think that was an external laboratory that had done those testing, but certainly Cherie did the 2005. But
Well,
there's
back then she
nothing.
probably didn't know how to do the testing because she doesn't
No.
have a bachelor's degree
No.
anyway.
No, and you got to remember 1996 compared to 2005. Hey, that's a lot of difference in terms of development. Okay, now the one which really pricked up my ears was the CSF1PO. In 2005, Stephen came up as a 12 allele, which is perfect. But in 1996, a 7 allele came up.
Yeah, that really bothers me.
Yeah. Now that is a difference of
5.
20. Well, yeah, that's right. 20 nucleotides. So that is a significant difference.
Per one or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So basically, you've got a small repeat sequence, AGAT, and it's repeated. Now, if you look at the difference between a 7 allele and a 12 allele, it's 5 exact copies.
Over and over again, right?
Yeah. So what happened is when they got the 1996 result, it was too short. It was too short by 20 nucleotides. Now, I know.
So if they would have been able to prime it, they would have had
they should have got
much
12.
more. Yeah. So they were only able to prime it so far. They didn't prime it far enough. So they didn't see the repetitive mark. So they may have short-ranged it, which only instead of 12, they would have saw their 7 and thought that was the number, but really it went to 12.
Well, what happens is this. Now, I've been around a lot of people that have done a lot of PCR. I've done PCR myself, and it's not as easy as everyone puts it out to be. Now, what can happen is that certain combinations of primers and DNA, they don't work well together. You get things called artifacts. So when you amplify up the DNA, it doesn't amplify up correctly. And so what happens is that scientists try all different things to get a proper amplification result. So this is the silly thing, Rubberducky and BB. Whoever did the testing in 1996 should have tested the mother and the father. And that way, by testing Dolores and Alan and having a look at Stephen, they would have seen, oh, wait a minute, has everyone got a 7? Or have some people got 12? And then where did this 7 come from? So they would have realized that there was an experimental error. But they never did that. They only tested Stephen. So by getting the 7 allele, they thought, well, he's a 7, right? So today, the primers are different. The technology's better. Scientists use different kits. They try all different things to make sure that the amplification takes place.
Well, that makes a lot more sense than us trying to figure it out on our own.
Look, yeah, sorry,
I wanted to kind of switch gears, and we're running about 8:30, so I wanted to talk about the results on the Teresa Halbach Kristen Rudy DNA comparison.
Yep.
And one of the things that really bothers me is that, and I walked through the video that you did, and I get that their base pairs are different, but how many base pairs are there? I mean, is it 1 out of 20 people have the same base pair? Or, I mean, what?
The genome of the mitochondria is over 16,000 nucleotides. In fact, 16,569. Where you, me, BB, our listeners, we're going to differ in our mitochondrial DNA sequences. We're going to have a lot of similarities because remember, mitochondrial DNA is transmitted from mother to offspring. Therefore, your mother's mitochondria, your own mitochondria, they're going to be almost 100% identical. Now, what scientists discovered was that there are 2 regions, in fact, there's 3. There's hypervariable region 3, but they didn't use that in this analysis. They looked at hypervariable region number 1, hypervariable region number 2. Hey, all that means is there are differences in the DNA sequences in those 2 regions. Yep, you understand that, Rubberducky?
Yeah. So you mean there's 16,500 and some
Yes.
different base pairs then?
That's the mitochondrial genome. The majority of that DNA sequence is identical. You got to understand that the mitochondria contains genes. Those genes encode proteins. Those proteins have specific functions. So therefore, there's a lot of, the word is evolutionary pressure to keep those sequences the same. So for example, if there's a change, a drastic change, you could end up getting a fatal disease. So there's a lot of pressure to ensure that those DNA sequences remain identical. However, in the hypervariable regions, it's not so much of an issue if there are subtle changes in the DNA because they're not so critical for the overall functioning of the mitochondria. So we can change things like that. It's like having 4 houses and you paint the external walls different colors. It's not going to make any difference to the integrity of the house. However, on the inside of the house, if you start removing walls and changing things around structure, they're going to be very, very different. So with some things you can change, other things are critical. You can't change them, otherwise it could potentially be fatal. So these hypervariable regions is where you and I, your listeners, we're all slightly different.
So when in one result, and I think it's funny because Teresa had a T and Christina had a C, right?
Yeah. So what the FBI did is that they have a sequencing kits and they look at the DNA at these particular regions and they sequence them. So they have what's known as a reference sequence, okay? And they compare the mitochondria of you, me, anybody else to the reference system. And they compare them. If the DNA is the same, they say, hey, the result is the same as the RCRS. Nothing to see here, guys.
Now the
Everything is consistent.
RCRS had me all confused till you explained it. So let's get into that before you go.
Yeah.
So you have a standard.
Yes, you do. You have a standard, correct. It's like a standard sequence. and everything is compared to that standard. For example, say you've got a person's height at, say, 6 feet, and they say, okay, this is the standard for this particular population. And then they compare people from either the same or a different population. Some people are going to be taller, some people are going to be shorter. And what they do is they simply record the difference to the standard. So far, so good?
Yeah.
So someone
That
might
was
be
a
6'2",
great
someone
analogy.
might be 5'5", so they
Yeah.
record the difference. So the scientists have decided, okay, we're going to sequence this mitochondria. They did this in 1999, and they're going to say, right, this is the gold standard. We're now going to compare everyone to this gold standard, and that's how they can determine similarities or
And
differences.
differences.
That's it. No big
So
deal.
Christina's matched the standard,
Yes, it
which
did.
was C.
Yes, it did. So they looked at K2, which was Christina's mother, and they also looked at the tissue sample, obviously obtained from the murder site. When they sequenced the mitochondria, both were exactly the same as the reference system. They had a C residue to compare it with Karen and the cremains. They had a C residue,
Carol.
at position 16,222.
And
So
that was
therefore,
Christine.
yeah. So both Christine's mother and the tissue sample were the same as the reference.
So the mitochondrial
Yep.
DNA matched on Christine and her mother, which was a C residue in the alphabet of DNA.
Correct. And that's
Now on Teresa,
yep.
we didn't get a match, did we?
No. So with the cremains and Karen Halbach, there was a T residue at 16,222. That is diagnostic. That tells
So
you
these
straight
are
away.
two different individuals, no
Yeah,
matter what.
no question. So in other words, the murder victims are different. The mitochondria are different. Yes, there are similarities, especially in hypervariable 2, but hypervariable region number 1, you can be definitive. They're different samples.
Okay. Let's go and look and see if we have any questions. We'll go over to the channel a little bit.
Apologies
do
that it was so
appreciate-
molecular. No, my pleasure.
Okay. Whoa. We need somebody modding the room.
So, Rubberducky, we have no questions?
I had to handle something.
Oh dear.
We were asked if we were a dating site.
Oh
In
my
a weird
lord.
way.
Oh my lord.
Yeah. Okay. So there aren't questions. I think a lot of people are still watching the video itself because it is very informative and you have to digest it kind of slow. J3SS asked, how was the comparison?
You're talking about the mitochondrial DNA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the mitochondrial DNA between both murder cases, they were different. The mitochondria are clearly different. There are similarities, especially in hyperverbal region 2. And what that is that it's known as a haplotype. So if you look at a specific population, you'll note that there are regions of the mitochondrial DNA that are similar. That's normal. That's known as a common haplotype.
So what we're seeing that was being shared that was a complete exact match,
Yeah, yeah,
that wasn't specific enough because a broad range of people would have matched that, right?
that is correct. So if you look at specific populations on the planet, you'll see that certain population groups have common haplotypes. So in other words, if they sequence random people mitochondrial DNA in a particular region, it's likely that they can share a common haplotype. That's quite normal. But remember, Karen Halbach showed a phenomenon known as heteroplasmy, where she had alternative mitochondrial DNA sequences, and that was not present in either Christine's mother or the tissue sample. So they were different. So there are differences
Why would
in
that have not
hypervariable
shown in
2.
Teresa's too?
Teresa picked up a C residue at position 320. So in other words, her mitochondria are derived from one pool of mitochondria, whereas in Karen Halbach, she has two. That's normal. So she had
Is that why
inherited,
hers was more?
hers was a C at position 320.
But I mean, with the differences between Karen and Teresa, is that why they could not lock in and say, "Yep, this is"? That they
That's
just
right.
couldn't rule her out.
That's exactly right. You can't rule out Teresa Halbach as being the as being the cremains,
But you can't lock in either, right?
because there wasn't she didn't display the heteroplasmy, right? So the FBI are extremely cautious when they make conclusions, so they couldn't rule her out. Whereas if you have a look at Christine's mother and the
It's a
tissue
complete
sample,
match.
it's 100% identical, no questions. But because there was a slight difference in Karen and the cremains, the FBI basically said she cannot be excluded.
Okay.
And that's why you got to do the genomic DNA analysis as well.
So even though the test results don't match, we're still left with a possibility that we have some handprints on the RAV and so forth. They're bloody. That we don't know who. We have CX down in the quarry. We don't know who this DNA belongs to. So with Rudy, Sean Rudy, who committed the murder and murdered Christine, who was 6 months pregnant. She was 21. Her and her best friend, Heather Tisler, they were on a crime spree heading around straight down through Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's not that big. It's about 3 hours from side to side. They're going right down the middle, and Manitowoc's on the east side, and that's where they're headed is straight down past there. How do we know? I mean, when you look at this case, we have cut marks on the bones in both cases.
Yeah, we do.
That's bizarre. Like kerf marks, which when we Google that, because that's what we do nowadays, we all know what it is. It's when you start to make a saw mark.
Yeah.
You don't cut all the way through. So it's a hesitation mark, right?
Correct. That's correct.
On both bones, both Christine Rudy's and Teresa's.
Yes, there are. There are hesitation cut marks.
They're both okay. So what I don't know, they're both apparently shot in the head.
Yes. Yeah.
They both have this. They both have the same bone expert said lightly.
Yeah. Yep. They both had Dr. Leslie Eisenberg as the forensic anthropologist. Obviously examined the remains and come up to certain conclusions. And we all know how controversial that was.
Well,
and
let's talk about that.
We are getting some questions.
Okay, well, real quick before we get to the questions, you want to kind of explain it to everybody what she did, what Eisenberg did?
Are we talking about the Christine Rudy case?
Yes, sir.
Her
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah. Well,
Oops.
Her
essentially,
blunder.
yeah.
Her blunder.
Yeah. Essentially, there was a burn pile at Sean's mother's house. And when that got dug up, and I just want to say that the burn pile was actually quite shallow. It wasn't a real deep burn pile. So we don't know whether that was a primary burn site or just a dumping site for the
Same with the Avery
remain.
case.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because Stephen
And it was a
Avery's,
trailer at his mother's house. It was a
I
mobile
believe so,
home
yeah.
trailer, and then it's a little shed, and it's set
Yeah.
in the same. When I was there, it's exactly the same position as Steve Avery's.
Yes. Yeah.
And he burnt her. Well, he burnt. Go ahead, tell your story, because
Yeah. Yep. So essentially, cadaver dogs, believe it or not, led the investigators to this burn pile, and when they dug up the bones and sifted the material, they found both adult bones, and Dr. Eisenberg said there were fetal bones or likely fetal bones present. This is before they found the torso. So I'm not quite sure whether Dr. Eisenberg knew that Christine was 6 months pregnant. Anyway, the conclusion that she came to was that there were both adult bones and potentially human fetal bones present in the burn pile. However, months later, when they found the torso of Christine Rudy, the baby was inside the torso, so it couldn't have been fetal bones, and that's a pretty big mistake to make for a forensic anthropologist. Yeah.
the credibility gets.
Well, this is the same forensic anthropologist who was not prepared to call the pelvic bones, the cut, burnt pelvic bones at
Or
the
wasn't
Manitowoc,
allowed to.
yep, in the Manitowoc County gravel pit as human. And that to me is quite disturbing. Whether she was put under a lot of pressure or she thought, oops, I better not make another mistake, and hence wasn't prepared to make a call. But yeah, the two cases are the MO in both cases are strikingly similar and disturbing, of course. This is a terrible, terrible event.
Well, I'm gonna talk for a minute about the legal part of the cases and how we've got some similarities. And when I say similarities, I mean in timeline. So in 2006, well, let me roll back a few minutes. So there's a love triangle. It's Heather Tisler. There's Christine Rudy, who's 6 months pregnant. And then there's Sean Rudy. Now they're all in their early 20s except for Tisler. Heather is only 18. So Heather's 18. Christine Rudy just turned 21. And depends on which alias you go with. Sean's either 23 or 25. Depends on if you go with Sean Rudy or if you go with Sean Oberly, because he legally has both names because it's in the court documents. Okay.
Yeah.
This case rolls out all the way till March of 2006. There's no trial because he confesses, and he pleads out. So he gets 2 life sentences plus 18 and I think 10. Heather, who was there when he shot her, she helped get the body in the vehicle. She then was there when he cut the body up. She was there when he she helped find the place to dispose of the torso.
Yeah.
She was there when he burnt the pieces of body. And then after all that, Sean helps Heather move her stuff out of her apartment, and they burn some of Heather's stuff on top of the burn pile that they had just burnt that on.
Yes.
So what I'm getting at is, okay, so we've ruled out that it's the same girl, but we haven't ruled out the same MO. Now, my question is this. Did they, because this case was resolved by March 2006, did they use this? Because I've always said to myself, God, it's like some psycho writer, like some horror writer
Hmm.
wrote, like hired Stephen King to write some horrible novel. But if you look at this case, they could have used it as their guideline on how to run Stephen's case.
Yeah. Yeah.
It ends right when they literally seal that case up, put everybody behind bars, and they wash their hands of it and hand back the bones to the parents, what's there, right when Brendan's given his taped confession.
Yep.
And what
Yep.
are they shooting for in this confession? For Brendan to tell what happened to Christine Rudy almost.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. It is disturbing, but we know that the victims are completely different. There's no question about that. But what is disturbingly similar are the MOs of the deaths of both victims.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether it's the same person involved in the crime, but they are very, very similar, and it occurred in a very short time frame. Rubberducky, if you don't mind, one of the listeners has asked a question, Michael, about
There's a few
the pap
questions here.
smear. Do you mind if I answer that one?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. Yeah, so it's hard to sort of like keep track of all the questions. That's an excellent question. If you have a look in the Teresa Halbach case, they also used an intimate sample or a pap smear in order to get a DNA profile. In the Christine Rudy case, they also used a pap smear sample as well. Now, the reason why they do that is that they know, absolutely know, that that sample came from that individual, because all the information is recorded, documented, goes through a normal procedure, and it's held by a laboratory or a hospital. So they use that as a standard. So therefore, because the body that they found would have been, decomposed, would not have been in a really good state, they can't really use that as a standard. So what they do is they use a sample that they know is 100% from that particular individual. It's like Rubberducky. You gave a blood sample 4 or 5 years ago. They've got all your documentation. It's held in a laboratory or some pathology place. They know it's from you. So therefore, they can use that as a standard. So hence, in this case, they can use what they did is I believe it was the FBI did a full genomic DNA profile of Christine's mother, father, and Christine's pap smear sample. By doing that, they were able to be definitive to say, yep, Christine is definitely the offspring of her parents, because all the markers would have come up. So that's why they use a pap smear, because they know that it's from that individual. So really
And
good question,
they
Mike.
use that pap smear to identify Teresa as well as Christine's, and then I believe Carmen's as well.
Yep. Yep.
They're
So
called intimate samples.
yes, they are. They are. Yep. Yep. Thank you, Michael. That's a really good question. That's the reason why. It's like, hey, sad to say, if there's a fire or a murder and they find teeth, they could then look at dental records and say, yep, the teeth match, the jaw, etc., because they've got X-rays. So that's how they can identify remains. It's exactly the same thing.
And the teeth are the last part to disintegrate usually in a fire.
That is correct. Yep, they're very, very hard to burn.
And the fact is that if we're missing all the teeth, but you have bones in one area, it makes you immediately question if this burnt evidence has been moved here, because you should see teeth if you're seeing other bones, especially one of them or two of them. There should be teeth.
That's
Right.
correct.
Right.
That's correct. And
Well,
I think.
and the
Yep.
piece of tooth the piece of tooth that did survive was one from the outside side of the jaw, which I read about it, and they said that on the inside part of the jaw, the inside of the mouth part of the tooth would be more likely to survive.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Michael asked another question, but why dismiss all other evidence collected and seek out a pap smear? Well, the pap smear we know is from that individual. So there's no dispute, no question. So what they do is they check other evidence samples that's collected with that DNA. So remember, in this particular case, her husband confessed to the murder. And also,
Well,
I
to
believe,
his mother,
yeah,
he even told the
yeah,
mother.
yeah,
And
yeah,
in fact, not only did he tell her that he did it, he told a friend of his, and that was J.C. Walters. And then also, he threatened all of them for talking to the authorities about it, threatened to kill them too.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Michael also asked a question about, Bibi, you're going to love this one. We really have zero proof that the pap smear was Teresa Halbach.
Exactly.
Truth.
Yes. And
That's true.
Beauty should have never agreed to that. Beauty should have fought
Michael,
that
you don't
tooth
need
and
to
nail.
apologize about talking about Teresa Halbach. We believe on our channel that victimology is just as important as looking at the suspects. And in order to do justice for the victim, we have to understand what position they were put in. We have to understand what their connections are. A
Yeah,
lot of times, I did a study last night, or no, it would have been the night before with BB. We decided to check out and see what kind of murders had taken place in how many years? 5 years, BB? Something like that.
Yeah. We have them on the wall. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
In
murderers
Discord.
all fell in two categories.
mm-hmm.
Literally, every single murder that we were looking at on this list fell in two categories. They either, well, I guess three. They either lived with them, they were a roommate.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we have in this case? Scott Blodorn in the Halbach case.
Yeah,
Or the second one was they were either dating or had previously dated
We
them.
dated significant others. Yes.
yeah,
And the
Most
third one was
common. Yeah.
they were married to them. Significant others straight down the list. And we went over 20 of them in a row.
yeah. And there's also another thing that links these two cases, and that's narcotics.
Hillegas
Yeah.
should have been looked at.
We've got
Heavily.
a lot of narcotics in the Halbach case, and
We
we
do.
know that in the Rudy case, meth. I don't know how to say the big word.
Methamphetamine.
Yeah, that was like extraordinarily being used, like a lot
Yeah,
by
yeah,
all the players. Yeah.
by all the
yeah.
players.
And sorry, Rubberducky, to interject, but I was actually quite surprised. I think there were 3 or 4 detectives or investigators, all either were ex-narcotics or were in the narcotics division. And guess what? They were the primary people involved in searching the Avery property.
Yeah,
Narcotics. What
narcotics.
are
Yeah.
narcotics detectives doing on the
Right.
Steve Avery site?
Yeah.
And not only that, as you brilliantly pointed out in your video, what is Wiegert and Fassbender doing talking to
I thought
Remica?
about that. We caught it. I caught another oops in that mess too. So Uyghur stayed outside.
Yeah,
Fassbender was the only one that entered the house. He was gone for 3.5 minutes. Now listen,
right,
that left Uyghur outside. The reason he said he was going to stay outside is to make a call, but he didn't because he would
right.
have been recorded. So it wasn't, in my opinion, what Fassbender was doing. It
Hmm.
was what Uyghur was staying behind to do because
Yeah,
Uyghur's the one that is reporting to Remiker saying, that stuff, I got that stuff. And he's hot-footed over there to Manitowoc. And guess who meets him? The sheriff and Dave Remiker.
yeah, yeah. There were some real big narcotic heavyweights searching the property, and it just so happens that I think it was Steyer, who was a narcotics investigator. He's the one. He's the one that was present when item FL was found, and I'm thinking to myself, "What the hell?" So
FL's the
yeah,
bullet. Yeah,
item FL is the bullet. So
the
you've
bullet
got
fragment.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if you're not really deep diving into the discussion and also the testimonies, this goes straight over your head. But
Yeah.
as soon as you see the connections, you go, wait a minute, all these guys are narcotics. And of course, Remaker, his boss was Lenk, and Remaker is in charge of the evidence. And you're thinking to yourself, what? Oh, and all the major fines are done either by the Manitowoc County or the Narcotics Division. So I don't know. I'm sort of like putting two and two together here, and it's a bit
Kind of like
disturbing.
my Pushing Up Daisy series.
Well, I mean, is this a murder investigation or is
Well,
it
what has me
narcotics?
baffled is if we are looking at him having the same MO, let's walk that theory for just a minute. Let's just grace it for a second. He would have literally had to have went previous to his crime spree, which could have happened. I mean, if he's gone over the edge and murdered someone, crime
Yeah.
spree doesn't sound too crazy. Okay. So let's say he heads over and let's pretend for a minute, everybody, that we are talking about the state of Wisconsin trying to do a drug sting on the Avery Dassey property to get Stephen somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just pretend that little haircut that Teresa Halbach has is really a cadet haircut. Let's say she's actually undercover DEA. Now, let's also think about where in the world was he getting meth from in the Rudy case? Well, they sure the heck don't get it from little towns like Thorpe and Stanley, not in the amount that he had, because he got it for distribution and selling. So he's a dealer. This means he's got a higher contact.
Yep.
So he has a rap sheet longer than my arm with this type of behavior.
Yeah.
Well, what if they were doing a double sting and it went wrong? Now, if he did do this and he did kill Teresa, he would have taken all her drugs with him.
Well,
It
I
could
think,
explain
yeah.
how they had ready access, but they have, this is what's got me. They came up with money quick because here's the deal. They end up robbing and stealing down there in Iowa, and they hit 25 bars along the way with all this money and everything.
Yep.
What kind of drug deals were they making? And was Teresa the connection with the drugs somehow?
Yeah, I know that's a horrible thing to say, but something does not add up here. It honestly does not. And, I think there's good evidence to suggest that the paneling in that RAV4 was taken apart. The dash.
Well, we're missing all the screws and
the screw covers.
Yeah. And,
and we know that they did do this because we have it down at Calumet County at the highway department. They say they're looking for a knife. I think that's the Trojan horse to get in there and really take the panels out and look for more drugs, that maybe there's drugs that were hidden in the RAV because the RAV would have been hidden.
And, how silly is this? That when they were interviewing Brenton or interrogating Brendan, he said that, oh yeah, my Uncle Stephen placed the knife in the RAV4 and placed it underneath the seat. And keep in mind, right, we're talking about months after the fact.
We're talking about March 2nd.
Yeah. And so when the crime lab and the investigators got the RAV4, they would have searched it top to bottom, correct? They would have searched everywhere. And then for a report to come up, I think it was Tyson, I could be wrong, don't quote me on that one. They go back and they look underneath the seat of the RAV. And I'm thinking to myself, you've got to be joking.
They pulled the seats out.
Yes, they did. Yes.
Yes,
they pulled the insulation
They
out.
even cut the carpet, under the seat.
Yes,
yeah, they're tearing this vehicle apart looking for drugs. That's my theory. That's my theory.
Michael Ryan has mentioned Kathy W.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Yeah.
that's what's always got me about the whole, is Teresa Halbach an undercover DOJ agent, because of the fact that when you look at the previous lady working for Auto Trader, we're looking at Kathy Williford with a K, so Kathy. As we watch, she goes ahead, she works for Auto Trader. She's on the route. She hands her route over as she stops Auto Trader to Teresa, which included that both of them had been to the Avery property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is later when we're in the trial, we have Angela Schuster, who works for Auto Trader, who does a slip. And she brings up the fact that Kathy Williford works for the government and works for DOJ. So
Yeah.
armchair sleuths around the world here, we all dig it out. I don't know who got it at this point first, but we all have knowledge now that we have a Kathy Williford with a C. So the guilters like to say it can't be the same person. It's not spelled the same. Okay, sure. Okay, so Kathy Williford, when you look at the cases that are available and you get to see her in completely separate cases than this, they're usually narcotics related.
Yeah.
So if Teresa was literally stepping into those shoes, that would mean why she had a burner phone. If she is a DEA agent or a
Yes.
DOJ agent,
Yeah.
she's going to have a burner phone for all the contact information.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is we have Carmen Boutwell before all this
Yes.
saying that the grandma saying that Carmen had that meeting with the DEA or the DA, I'm sorry, which would have apparently been the DA of Calumet, which was Ken Kratz at that time.
Yeah.
So she doesn't want to do whatever Ken's saying. Something's crossed her line. She's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It makes you think that she backed out of some deal.
Ken Kratz, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I'm thinking it was Avery related at this point in my mind. So if she backs out, they're out the girl to go take the pictures. If this is a setup, if that's the way they were going to do drug sting, they're out the girl to do the drug sting.
Yep.
Well, their backup plan could be the cadet. And then you've got Rudy. And like I said, this is all just a walking through theory. You got Rudy coming near the area on a crime spree. And then you have the same MO in both cases with the Christine Rudy, how she was killed and dismembered, burned, and then thrown off the bridge. Well, we're missing so much of Christine Rudy. We don't know all what happened.
No.
We're missing so much of Teresa. We still don't know what happened.
Yep. And I think you made the point, Rubberducky, that Sean basically spread out her body in multiple locations. This is exactly what we see with Teresa Halbach. We don't see one skeletal remain in the burn pit. We got bones everywhere. And I never really appreciated this until I realized that they found bones on the grass outside the burn pit. And sort of like it looked like someone was walking with a bucket and just.
Which case are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Teresa Halbach case.
See, the problem is I'm having to ask you because that's true in the other case as well.
Yeah, there were bones. Yeah,
see,
there were
that's
bones scattered. There were
now,
bones
one
scattered.
thing that's interesting in the research that we've done on Sean Rudy, the one that has done this to Christine, her husband, for a whole 8 weeks. His reasoning for putting her in so many different places. Now, that's the big question for me in the Halbach cases. Why would somebody put her in so many different places? Was because he's psycho. And he says, because he's hoping that people will come along and find her and give her a proper burial.
Yeah.
I had never heard of anybody being able to justify why we have these bones in so many different places. If he's high on these narcotics, and he's flipped his wig, he's murdering people, he's cutting them up. Well, heck, that can make perfect sense to him then. Yeah, that way people will find her and give her whatever. That could explain why we have both bodies just all over.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's disturbing, you highlighted this. We've got the death of 3 young women within 12 days. And we know that in
and
two of,
within 2 hours of each
I'll
other.
be right back,
yeah,
guys. I'm going to let my dog out. Sorry, guys, but keep
no
talking,
problems at
please.
all. We got the death of three young women, within about a 12-day time period, all in the same locale. And we know 2 of those cases involve narcotics at least. Of course, to try and link narcotics with the Teresa Halbach case, there's no hard evidence per se. And, I don't want to say anything like that, but what concerns me, BB, is the fact that you've got so many narcotics agents involved in this case from day one.
Right. Well, I found it just suspicious over the Kathy Williford part of it. So then with all these other agents all over the place,
Yep.
it's hard not to think that they were trying to somehow frame somebody with whatever they could.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the auto trader is your perfect cover. Because you've got basically a young person traveling around the countryside, taking photographs, collecting money. Hey, if you got some type of nefarious activity going on, that's very easy to do. Who's going to suspect a photographer?
Well, they're always trying to make Steve look so rapey. So I always assumed that he didn't hit on Kathy Williford, so that they switched her out with a younger model.
It could well be. I believe that they were going to. I believe they were going to set Stephen up for rape. I can't understand why they would collect seven pairs of panties.
And the clean ones out of the dresser. That's just
I have no explanation for that. And the other thing that we got to remember is that, according to the records, that was going to be Teresa's last day working for Auto Trader at that Halloween. Now, isn't that incredibly coincidental?
But it's funny how she had told her boss that, her Pierce, their partner, and but Auto Trader didn't seem to know that was going to be her last day.
Yeah, that's true.
Never any mention of that anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Michael Ryan has asked the question about the pap smear. All other evidence containing her DNA, hairbrush. Yeah. The thing is that you've got to remember this. If you're using a standard from an individual, you have to be 100% sure that standard is from that individual. If you're looking at, say, a hairbrush, and I even hate to say it, I'm a bit embarrassed, but a vibrator,
or the
toothbrush. Yeah, you cannot be
your roommate
definitive.
Could have used it or done something
That's
nefarious
exactly right.
with it.
Yep. You'd be laughed
or your ex-boyfriend staying at your house, or
whatever. You'd be laughed out of court if you say, "Yep, this is Teresa Halbach's standard." If you utilize these particular items, no one is going to dispute a pap smear. And I suppose that's why Ken Kratz said it's an intimate sample, because a pap smear is from
actually we looked that up, and in the court terms, intimate sample means pap smear.
Yep, correct. So that's why they use it as a DNA standard. You can't use a tooth because, for a start, the tooth would have been badly exposed to fire, and you can't sort of use the tooth as a comparison, because what are you going to compare it to? Whereas if you use a pap smear and the pap smear says this is from Teresa Halbach, it contains a pap smear, then you compare everything to the pap smear. Now remember that item BZ, which was the bone that had a bit of muscle tissue, that had a 7 loci match to the pap smear. Yes, 7 loci is not enough, but I tell you what, all the alleles that did come up were a match. So it'll be great. And that's why Kathleen Zellner wants to get her hands on those bones to test them.
Well, who could blame her? I still believe that Teresa's alive and that they used somebody else's bones.
Well, and I think Michael has a point. I'm back, by the way. And that
Yeah.
point is that we have no chain of evidence whatsoever on the pap smear for
Right,
Teresa.
no paperwork.
No
That is
paperwork from
shocking.
the hospital.
Yep.
Nothing proving that it's TH.
That's shocking.
That's a problem from the get-go.
Yep, I
They could have
agree.
easily swapped out somebody else's set of
Yes.
DNA, and especially once anything has gone through Sherry Colhane's hands.
Well,
Okay,
right
guys,
there.
what new evidence did you guys bring up in the short time I went to get a tea? Because Mark wants a link and I need to know. What evidence are you talking about, Mark, hon?
Yeah.
Let us know, because we're not sure.
Yep, the evidence
Are you
that we
talking about
have.
Christine Rudy?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's all
There's a
straight from
delay,
the
yeah.
FBI.
I should do live chat. Why am I on top? That's why. Okay.
Yep, that's all straight from the FBI. So this is all official material, official evidence.
Yes,
and-
Michael Ryan, I think it was planned in advance also.
Yeah, I think I'm at the point where obviously everything that we've looked at in this case, everybody's jumping the gun. You have meetings behind closed doors with Peg L, who's the attorney general, that have key players in the Steve Avery investigation there, calling it a crime. I think they called it crime seminar. Well, let me tell you, I made fun of the name because I was like, yeah, it's a crime seminar, all right.
Yeah, and how to do it.
Well,
so
yeah.
Are they planning this since 2003? In my personal opinion, as a duck, yeah. Absolutely. They've been planning it possibly since 2002. To me, it was like Sherry Colhane's like, okay, the machine just popped this out saying that we're going to have to let Steve Avery out of prison. So I can stall for about a year. You guys get your game plan going, because after that point, it's out of my hands.
Yep. Well, this is what you just said there is potentially very, very interesting. And the reason why I say that is I cannot believe that Sherry Colhane waited a year to test the pubic hair. And if you're correct, that's very disturbing, because if she knew the result a year before and failed to disclose it, she could have easily passed that information on to the Manitowoc County sheriffs and said, guys, we've got a problem. He's going to walk. What are you going to do? So that
Find her, place her in the garage or the trailer.
Yeah, I know. Please don't get me started on that one. That's just
Michael
horrendous.
Ryan asked who just spoke, and I believe he was referring to me when I said that I believe Teresa's alive, and I'm BB Bumblebee, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah. So what
BB
I think
is a researcher, you guys, with me. She's been with me the longest, and she and I were in the case together probably now 3.5 years, huh, BB?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still relatively new to the case, so I'm still learning a lot, but it's quite shocking. And you know what people have been commenting about is correct. Law enforcement could have well known the answer to that pubic hair result, and they needed time to work out Plan B. And I agree. I reckon the moment Stephen Avery walked out of that prison, they knew what was coming. They knew that a civil lawsuit was about to happen, and they had to act quickly.
And to be honest, if we really step away from this case, all right, completely forget about the names, completely forget about everybody involved, and you look at the state of Wisconsin looking at a $36 million lawsuit, I can guarantee you without a shadow of a doubt that when they ran the records of the individuals on that property and they saw that the records that they saw, that they would suspect drugs were there.
Hmm.
And they probably thought to themselves, why pay $36 million? Let's do a drug sting, blow it wide open.
I think they made many runs at Steve from the time that he was set to get out of prison until when they put him back in. I think they were
Well, yeah,
trying anything. Take your
yeah,
dinner plate, throw it at the wall, and see what sticks.
yeah.
Hey, LL Grace, you're not super, super late. We're still just talking as always.
Yeah.
What we're talking about tonight, we did cover that Teresa and Christine Rudy do not match on the very, very critical point, which is a base pair. Correct, Dr. Silkman?
Correct. Their mitochondria are different.
Yeah. So Teresa has a T, and it's going to be real easy to remember because Christina
Well,
has a C. So,
irony.
That's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
irony.
And the other thing we looked at were the blood DNA results of 1996 and 2005, and there was nothing nefarious. It was basically experimental errors, and that
Yeah,
can
it was
account for the differences.
basically what Dr. Silkman's saying in medical stuff, because I've asked enough to get it into layman's terms, is that back in 1996, Steve Avery's results were very remedial because the testing procedure was so limited.
It was
And
fairly primitive.
since then we've had a lot of upgrades, and so we can get very precise. So
Yeah,
they only had 3 loci in 1996. Those 3 loci, um, you know,
two were different.
they were being read by the human eye, and we have to give a bigger range. So 9.3 is very close to 10 because you got 9 and 10 somewhere in between. There's good enough. But then in
Yeah,
2005, it goes through an actual machine,
yeah.
and it gives you the actual printout, and you
Now,
get very
I have
specific.
a question about the machine. You say now is the machine completely infallible?
It's accurate because what they do is they preload standards.
Yeah.
So they know exactly the result to get. So what they do is they do test samples and they do an allelic profile of the test samples. And what they do is they compare your results with the standard. So they know exactly what results to obtain.
And they
So,
do that in most laboratories, not just
yeah,
DNA.
no.
When I tested eggs for salmonella and E. coli and all that great stuff, what we would have to do is we would have to submit a sample that had been exposed to our lab environment that was
Hmm.
our standard, along with the samples that we had taken of the eggs. And if the lab experimental one was foul for some reason,
Yeah,
then we had to retest the eggs if we could still do that. Otherwise, we could not use the eggs. So the original
correct.
standard had to come out completely
Yeah,
clean.
yeah.
And that's why I kind of can understand a little bit of the language a little bit, because if I were to, let's say, test these eggs and they did have salmonella or E. coli, I would have gotten that wherever my gloves touched.
Hmm. Yep. So the machines, they're extremely accurate, and of course we've got now the anti-rapid DNA system where a user doesn't even have to touch anything. All the user does is add the sample to the machine. The machine does the rest. All the results are placed on a computer readout, no user intervention required. That's incredible. And as I've said many times, the frustrating thing is we can get a result in 90 minutes and, hey, test all the bones, see who's there, pay some respect. Pay some respect to Teresa and her family and find out, are those cremains hers? Do they belong to somebody else? What's going on? At the moment, the state has left everything up in the air, and it really is disgraceful. If you've got a means and mechanism to find out a result, hey, let's do it. Let's put politics aside here and let's find out.
I agree.
And Stephen Avery has said, and Kathleen Zellner has said to Stephen many times, science will find you out. And she won't hesitate to say, you're guilty. But if it works the other way, you've got to accept the other side of the coin. Correct?
Right.
Correct. So it's so frustrating. It's so silly.
Lacey wanted to know, gotcha. Any update on getting the DNA from Carmen for comparison? I will tell you this. There's a friend of the family, and I've been talking to him, and I'll just tell you the Boutwells feel intimidated is what I'm getting from the friend. So we're working on it. We're trying to get them to understand that there's protection in a group of many. Like, for instance, when I first started the channel, there maybe had 10 people with me. I felt very nervous saying the things I did. But now there's so many people watching, I feel more protected. And I feel that that's what we could offer to the Boutwell family is the world is watching. So more than likely, nothing's going to happen because we're all paying attention. Whereas if you just sit on knowledge, you can be blackmailed. Excuse me, let me get a drink. Now, I do want to make a point. I always find it interesting, and I think a lot of times we don't realize it, but for the last 3.5, 4 years here, we get spells where we get hit by guilters and we get slammed with some really, really nasty, almost sexual statements made by new people that are really uncomfortable. But we only get that stuff when we're on to some sensitive material. So when I started releasing the Christine Rudy information, I thought it quite telling that I am seeing a lot of guilters trying to jump on my toes. They're hitting me on every channel I post at. They're coming on our channel tonight. We had one gentleman I had to, well, two of them now had to be put in timeout. They've never been on our channel before, and they're making sexual comments. And it's quite humorous to me because it shows we're on the right track.
Yep.
Mike O'Ryan's saying quite a bit here.
Ah, that's wonderful, Michael. You know, Michael, you should email me. Maybe we can get you.
Or you should come into Discord.
Yeah. I'll put my email down if you want to talk, to get you on here if you would like. We would love, I mean, we're constantly working on trying to solve. And yes, to me, Carmen was a murder. And she's been one that me personally and the other ducks have constantly watched over. I am trying to get to the bottom of who killed her. Oh, I'm not talking about Lee. No, you're welcome. No, the person, we put him in timeout, hun.
Yeah,
No,
they
they've
were
had
put in
nothing.
timeout.
No, I know you meant no disrespect whatsoever. No, this person came on and said some nasty sexual things. So BB timed him out. Then another guy came on and said some really crude sexual comments. Nothing about our case or nothing about you guys, just totally random weird stuff. So hopefully they'll leave us alone. But
Aren't we meant to be
I'm good at
talking
putting
about
people in
DNA?
timeout.
Yeah. What's
Aren't
that,
we meant to be talking about DNA?
Yeah, aren't we meant to be talking about DNA? You got it.
Yeah.
But Michael, we'd be so grateful because if we can get to the bottom of how Carmen really was murdered, and that it would really, really help. Annette, Pap, if you yeah, okay, so I'll give you a brief summary, but we do have a movie called Teresa, Carmen, and Ricky. It's a 3-part series. It's going to take you about an hour to watch all 3, I think. Carmen Boutwell was 24 years old. She was living in Mishcot, which was about 4 or 5 miles from Stephen Avery. She was, both her and Teresa go missing on the 31st, aren't seen again. On the 3rd, when Teresa is reported missing and then later filed as death, on her incident report, Carmen Boutwell had been found in distress in her apartment, was taken to the hospital where she later died, and was her toxicology came back that she had methadone and alcohol in her system. And the complication was Carmen didn't have a prescription, nor was she a user of methadone. So the problem is that Carmen's the same height, the same weight, the same body build, brown eyes, short haircut, just like Teresa's. Not at that time, I understand, but she she did resemble her enough that bones could pass for that. So then later, as you go into this, we find out that the first bone is reported in the CASO, which is the Calumet County Investigative Report that we do a daily read on. The first bone is found in the Halbach case, Avery case, on the 12th. Now, the complication is it's reported that it's been given to 2 anthropologists. The bones have been given on the 10th. So we don't really understand how that works. However, Carmen's cremation, which was basically pushed by the police department onto the family, took place on the 8th. So, you know, everybody that's in this case that knows about Carmen has questions if Teresa and Carmen are somehow, if their bones are interchangeable, or if we only have Carmen's bones, or does Carmen play a part in this? But I have always felt very close to Carmen, and I've never met her. Just in this case, from the day that I heard about this, my heart skips a beat because I feel like she was murdered. And she was considered a homicide case for a while through Remaker, narcotics dealer. I'm sorry, I keep saying that like a Freudian slip. Narcotics investigator. My words keep slipping.
Well, it's kind of the same thing.
Black Sheep wants to know who gave Carmen the drugs. That's the big multi-million-dollar question that I'm trying to find. How did Carmen get methadone? Now, the story goes, according to Grandma, that Carmen had to meet the DA, who most likely was Ken Kratz out of Calumet County, in an out-of-the-way place, according to Grandma. Carmen got out of the vehicle, went to the law enforcement DA's vehicle, sat there, came back, and she was saying, nope, didn't want to do whatever it was, we don't know, but she didn't want to do it. And then it's not very long after that she is pronounced dead. So we don't know where she got the drugs from. I've always wondered if it was Kratz himself, honestly.
Right. After all, he was using substances shortly after that would get you a prescription for methadone.
Well, and you've always got the Candyman that Remaker refers to, and then that's Dr. Theismann. Now, Dr. Theismann was giving out all kinds of opiates and everything. He'd give you 3 months supply. It was the friend of the family that comes and talks to us in the puddle room, that it was a friend of the family had said, grandmother had said that it was the DA.
Plus, I think we had that somewhere else before that too.
He donated $2 to say that he farted and he wanted to talk about it. I'm glad that you're able to release gas.
Well, that's nice. Yes.
Yeah.
That way you won't explode.
It's better out than in.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel better now?
She met with the DCI, who threatened her if she didn't tell the names of people. Really? Okay. Michael, you gotta get on here with us and share with us so that we can understand it.
You should come in Discord.
Yeah, after this, Ryan, we go to Discord and we have the link in here. If you want to click it, you can kind of walk us through some of this, because I am desperately trying to help Carmen, and yeah, that's true. She was a pothead, but nothing else. I honestly, you guys, if Carmen wasn't murdered, I'll eat my watch. I'm just saying, that's how strongly I feel. For her to not have a drug habit, and yes, like Yasmin says, methadone is not a drug you start with.
No.
Yeah.
But it is a really good painkiller, supposedly. So
okay, well, I don't believe in. I'm holistic. I don't believe in medicine, so I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I don't believe in medicine.
But
in an
according
emergency,
to,
I believe it'll save your life. but I think it should be highly respected. Black Sheep said there was a theory that Teresa's murder was drug related, as she could have possible been a drug mule. I heard
Yeah.
that rumor too. You
Yeah.
know, that rumor comes from actual something that I think you should all do, and that's go through the CASO and find the page where Ryan gives Teresa's old address in there to the law enforcement in Green Bay. When me and BB and Lily dug this up and used this address, it keeps taking us back to the same location, which is the Lutheran Social Services on the drug rehab side. And that facility was a treatment center for those addicted to methamphetamine. Is that how you say it?
Methamphetamines.
Okay. And
Methamphetamines.
heroin. And heroin. So the question is she a drug mule, or is she something to do with setting up somebody? Is she a drug sting operator, you know, like undercover? I don't know. But it is leading us more and more with the narcotics individuals, investigators in and out with Wiegert, with that stuff by Dassey's, making the call to Rimiker, hooking up with him right away, including pushing through the crowd. Did you guys see that in the CASO report? We get over there. Okay, so I'm Rimiker and I'm with Fassbender. They want to know the quickest way to get to Manitowoc County as soon as they make the call and say they got the stuff to Rimiker. When they get in the building, they're going to meet with the sheriff. We're in Manitowoc County. We're not talking about Pogle anymore. We're talking about Sheriff Peterson. Or in March, it could have been Robert Herman, one of the two. Okay. But he pushes it through them. He's like, excuse me, I need to slip through here. There you go. He's trying to get whatever he's got on him away from him. Whatever that stuff is that Wiegert has, he's hightailing it through that building, trying to get that out of there. And he's like, Dave, you got a minute? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you're right, Black Sheep. Ryan couldn't remember what he dropped off at Teresa's under oath.
He could, and he also could remember that it was day or night.
Or if it was day or night.
Yeah.
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 Well, you know, if you're on those kind of drugs, maybe you can't remember if it's day or night. I don't know.
Yeah. I listed all on Discord. I listed all the personality changes that one undergoes when on methamphetamine, and it's terrifying.
Well, I mean, why not just, you know, if you're going to do that, why not just go open your cupboard and drink Drano and get it over with at once?
Oh, yeah.
I guess it's not as much fun.
Let's see here. Okay, Lee says, I don't have an addictive personality, but have tried it only once years ago. It sends you crazy, and that was one night. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, heavy users do some stupid crap. Gamer Girl says methadone is used to treat drug addiction.
Well, and it also is a pain relief.
True.
It gives you 8 hours in a single dose of pain
Lacey
relief.
Anna says, here in Iowa, the state gives methadone out to recovery addicts. We call it in the clinic here. Know this because my dad been going for 15 years. It definitely has helped him stay off other things. Well, that's good. Mm-hmm. Oh, it has its purpose.
Yeah.
Scott Breckner says, I tried Discord, but there was a robot asking if I'm a human or not. Could not figure it out. Oh, don't get me started, Scott. There's been a couple moments. But I don't know how to fix that for you.
Did you tell it, yes, you are a human?
Yeah, tell it, yes, you're a human.
Tell them Ducky told you to come?
But if they ask for your DNA, tell them no.
Yeah, definitely not.
Debbie, she said her aunt takes it for her scar tissue for her surgery.
Yeah, I've heard they also hand it out like morphine in cases of morphine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we finally can say, as we wrap up our live tonight and we head over to Discord for a public, do a little bit more investigating and talking. And Michael Ryan, I sure hope you'll come in there. We would be delighted to talk to you about anything you want with Carmen.
And you're all welcome to come in there and help us work on the case in there.
Absolutely.
Talk with
Carmen
others.
keeps me in this case a lot because I feel she's one of the victims too, and I feel like she gets left out of the public awareness a lot. So between her and Brendan and Teresa and Stephen and Kristen and Rudy, I feel like we have a number of victims here. And, you know, I've started to wonder, do they really have the killer of Teresa? And could, you know, is it possible that Sean Rudy, in a drug enraged frenzy, not only would he have done the crime spree, but is it possible that he actually was killing these girls? You know, he's high on meth, and
He
we have
may not even
methadone
have
over.
remembered. He may
Yeah,
not even have remembered.
he may not have. It's just unreal. I've been looking for
No,
somebody
it's
for
an
a long
app.
time.
It's an app. Discord is an app.
Yep. All you do is,
Take the link.
yeah,
I don't have a Twitter.
Michael, I have Twitter. Do you want me to go get it? I can go get it. Here's mine. Because I was on there just a little bit ago. Whoa, white screen. Ah, my eyes. Okay. Michael, this is a Twitter for Rubberducky.
Yeah.
Anything you give me there, if you wanted to, I could share with BB on a different way.
Yeah.
Good night,
Yeah.
Mary.
Or, well,
Mary,
you
love
could
you
give it
so
to me in there
much.
too. Or you could give it to
Yeah,
me in
it's like
there.
3, 4 in the morning for Mary, if not later. Oh yeah,
So,
you can have any theory you want on our channel, Black Sheep. We absolutely respect everybody's theory.
yeah,
It's a theory, for God's sake. It's a person's right to believe as they
exactly.
wish,
Exactly.
and
I
it
mean,
should be respected.
I argue with BB
Michael.
and Rubberducky all the time, but the reality is, because we don't have full genomic DNA profiles, I'm afraid you can't rule anything out. That's the frustrating thing. And I keep on telling BB and I keep on telling Rubberducky, hey, let's get those bones tested. We'll find out one way or another. And clearly the state does not want any more testing. They made a huge mistake by giving Zellner item FL, which proved to be very embarrassing. I don't think they're going to give him back the bones.
Right.
And you know what the irony is? I bet you the only bones that they kept are the calcined ones, the ones where you can't get anything from. Now, wouldn't that be ironical?
Yeah.
And
That'd be
somebody
about
had
right.
made a comment about it being horse tranquilizer. I believe you're thinking of ketamine.
Yeah, ketamine.
Is a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah, like Lee
methadone
said,
used
say no to
for.
drugs. Say no to drugs. That's
I've
right.
never heard of methadone being used as a horse tranquilizer. I might be wrong, but
Yep. And if I could just sort of say, just sort of focusing back on what I did in this particular video, it's good that we can actually go back to the original material and we can work out what happened on a DNA level. And because there was a lot of controversial discussions on the internet and on Reddit and other places, and I think you've got to be careful about making big statements, especially when you don't know the underlying material. And I went back to the basics. I looked at all the results, and you can explain them. No question
Right.
about it. You can explain them.
Right. Well, okay, let's sum it up, you guys, before we take off here. So Christine Rudy and Teresa Halbach's mitochondrial DNA do not match. There's a world of difference, correct, Dr. Silkman?
They're definitely different.
Okay.
No question.
so
Stephen
that
Avery.
settles the thing that was going around Reddit.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yep. And also
Does it?
Stephen Avery's.
Does that mean that we're not dealing with a connection to the case? No, it just means
No,
we're dealing
God,
with
no.
two different murdered victims
You're looking at two different victims. No
with the
question.
same MO, though, on the killer.
The same MO is scary, and I feel very, very uncomfortable that narcotics can be potentially involved. That's serious stuff.
Well,
I
it's
agree.
kind of like almost how could it not be involved with that many agents?
Well,
Yeah,
I will tell you
yeah.
this much. How could it not be involved with this kind of murder? You
Oh,
know, you
well,
have to be out of your mind
yes, you do.
to
You do.
do this, period.
Yep. You got to consider that Sean not only killed his wife, but his own unborn child. How
Yep.
Yeah.
bad is that?
Yep.
How bad is that? And again, as I've discussed with you many times,
Well,
Rubberducky,
and he said he didn't want a disabled child because she was on drugs, but yet
yeah,
it's okay to kill it. Yeah.
that's right. I don't know what goes through people's minds, but that is horrendous. And the other point I want to make is we don't see a deceased body in a ditch or in the woods. We see a body scattered. That's exactly what we see in Teresa
Not
Halbach's
only
case as well.
that, but there's something very bizarre about the bones in the Halbach case,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the exact bizarre
Yeah,
thing
we forgot
in
that on the
Christine Rudy,
PowerPoint list. Yeah.
and that is that we have crushed fragments of bones,
Mm-hmm.
like just tiny,
Yeah,
minute
that was the
little
bullet point
crushed
we missed.
pieces, slivers of bones, and yeah, all in different locations.
Yep. Yep. This is
Oh, I wish I had Black Sheep. I wish I had 5 minutes to ask Barb some things, man. Oh, yeah. Now I'd be asking Barb some hard questions if I could talk to her. I'm a mother of a child with the same disabilities, and boy, do I have some questions for that person.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know about you guys, but I feel that my perspective of this case has done a 180 because
yeah.
of the potential use of narcotics. This is not, haha, let's frame Steve Avery, let's put him in prison, blah blah. I think there's a underpinning culture here of narcotics, and I don't know. It makes me feel. I mean, we've had similar cases in Australia in which top judges, lawyers, police, underworld figures are all involved in narcotics and are all together. And when there are victims, people don't care. They'll kill, shoot, burn. It's a free for all because we're dealing with lots of money,
Yeah.
power. It's the level of corruption is very scary. It's very real.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we look at the cases between the two, yeah, baby.
Cinnabar Zoe said, can rapid
Oh,
DNA testing work for those that are
No,
those calcified bones?
no. Essentially, with the calcined bones, all the organic material is gone. It's all burnt away, and that's why the bone looks like porcelain, because there's nothing there to test. Remember, guys, that your bones are living tissue. You have blood going through them. So they're a rich source of blood and other nutrients go through your bones.
but if they get
That's
cooked, then that
that's
evaporates.
it. If that all evaporates, all your cells, your mitochondria, everything is gone. So essentially what they want to look for are bones which haven't been burnt to the same degree, and that's where you're going to get your mitochondrial DNA from. So that's what
Okay.
you need to test.
Black Sheep said, and Barb got busted for pot. Yes, she did. And then
She
her
did, yeah.
arrested. It got Lord, I can't even think. I'm tired. I'm sorry. It got dismissed at the prosecution's suggestion. Right? Come on. Really? Yasmin says, I think narcotics is how they were able to get people to cooperate. I agree
Correct.
with you.
Correct.
And I don't believe Barb just got caught with a little bit of pot because that phone conversation where Scott and Barb are talking with Steve in the prison. She keeps saying, you don't understand. They were going to put me in jail. And Steve says, they can't put you in jail. Put you in jail for what? And she wouldn't say
Yeah.
what.
Well, the thing is Uyghur, he says, I got that stuff. We got that stuff. So to me, that's a pickup. So in theory, if this was something that was outside planted somewhere, I don't know where, but maybe in one of those old vehicles or something. But so they tell Barb, basically, we've got you for drugs. Or if they knew that there were drugs on the property, they would have had Barb's cooperation if she wasn't going to protect her son. So in other words, if she had to make a choice and she chose the selfish choice, which was self-preservation, then it explains why she bailed on Brendan, because she was being selfish and she wanted to protect herself. However, it's also possible that Scott had his own drugs there too. We don't know. We just know that Uyghur is picking up something called that stuff, and he's in a big ass hurry to get over to Fassbender. And I'm sorry, Uyghur is in a big hurry to get over to Remaker, the narcotics investigator.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I think
And
the genes, I think we
yeah.
can all be grown ups here and admit that the genes are a Trojan horse to get on property. And I
Yeah.
think the knife is a Trojan horse to tear that car apart.
Well, and also Barb was in court for her little charge there at the time they questioned Brendan, and that's why she
Listen
said
to this.
she wasn't able to be there.
Kaomi says, then Barb buys a house after. Where's the money from?
Well, and also that happened right after Scott testifies. Suddenly his little record gets kind of cleaned up, and then he suddenly isn't in debt anymore and is able to.
Yeah. Sheila, I know, right? Was that the most awkward line of questioning ever in the CASO on Brendan? They're literally talking like a conversation that Uyghur and Fassbender have obviously had off camera, off the audio. But they don't think Brendan's picking up. So they're having their own conversation. And you can tell they're honing in on something. And they do that when they're talking about that pizza too. That was strange when they were talking about the pizza, because they're like, we had that, didn't we? What? Okay, anyway, the point being that when they're doing all this talking and all this, they turn to Brendan out of the blue. So, Brendan, you like snow?
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. I know. The references to drugs and narcotics is just ridiculous. That's all he's got in his mind, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real worry.
Well, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Well, we know
Correct.
what snow means in the drug world, which is cocaine. So
Yeah.
if snow was on his mind, if that was a Freudian slip, then that's what we're looking at. If that was, that's a big if, but if that was what he was thinking of in his mind, and that's a Freudian slip saying snow, well, that tells us then in that scenario, if that were all true, that that would be the drug they were pulling out of there. And boy, I'll tell you, that would have gotten Barb more than just a few jail days.
Yeah. Well, I think it
Well,
also
13 years later on that phone call, she was still sounded terrified that they were going to put
You'll
her in
have a dead
jail.
sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Now there's something quite big going on, and I suppose in a way they had to act quickly on Stephen if they were going to do a drug sting or a drug bust, because the big boys were just about to be deposed, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah, the last couple, yeah.
Time was running out. Time was running out.
I want to
And
share.
also, Black Sheep says that Barb is the ringleader, and it makes sense now. Well, here's another little tidbit that we looked for, that Dr. Silkman looked for in the ledger, was, or in the court testimonies, both, maybe.
In the case, yeah.
Was who first brought up that the pants had bleach on them? How did the police know that the pants were at his house with bleach on them? And you want to tell them where you found that at?
Yeah, well, it sort of like came out of the blue because it was mentioned, I think, by either Uyghur or Fassbender about the genes. And then, wait a minute, what's the context of these genes? Where did Fassbender get the idea about these genes with bleach? It had to come from somebody, and I traced it back. It actually came from Barb, his
Yeah.
own mother.
Oh
His
my
own
God, you
mother.
guys, I just thought of something. You know, like when we're researching or we're having these conversations with everybody and like new information comes to light and then you replace stuff from the past in the case and all of a sudden things click into place.
Yeah.
Okay, hear me on this. Now, I've basically had this played over in my head a million times trying to connect the dots. So you're talking about Barb talking about the bleached pants. We're talking
Yeah.
about Uyghur saying that stuff at the Dassey residence to go get the pants. And now listen, you have a teenager, supposedly a teenager, on the phone with Scott Tadich when he's at work. And he says in a frantic attitude, Scott's the one responding like he's the one that's in trouble. And he says in a total panic that he's got to get home. He's got to leave work immediately because he's worried there's blood on pants that the boys were messed up with his laundry, that the Dassey boys' clothes were messed up with his laundry. What do you want to bet? We're talking about something besides laundry here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and also,
did he get the call at work that was like, "Hey, your that stuff you had, Scott, got picked up"?
well, Barb admits that she made that call
Okay, was that
at
Barb
one point
then?
in time.
Was that Barb
Yes.
saying, "Hey, Scott, they got that stuff here. They took it."
She never gave any further explanation, just that it wasn't one of the kids, it was her. That account is wrong and that it was her that called Scott that day. But that was it. She says, there, so you got your answer now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No further explanation.
Yeah.
Or better clarification or anything.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
the more we dig into narcotics
oh
in
boy.
the Halbach case, the more I can see not only do we have the same MO for the killer, but we may have a narcotic connection somehow in
Yeah,
this
and
case.
there's an underlying thread,
Yeah.
and that's a real worry. And I'm telling you, people, when it comes to narcotics, when it comes to money, they don't muck around. They
Right.
don't muck around. They won't hesitate twice to kill even family members. It can be that bad. And like I said, to me, the case has taken on a completely different road. And it now makes sense why all these narc guys are on the Steve Avery property. And don't forget, they're on front line searching. They're there from day one. They're there from day one. They're searching the garage, the trailer, everywhere. And it's interesting that they pop the hoods of every car.
Yeah.
Is it really to look for Teresa's body?
Or is
Because
it what for? What if they're looking
or a
for their own
stash,
drugs? What if this was
or a
supposed to be a
stash.
drug sting? They
Yep.
load up a vehicle full of drugs so that they can plant it somehow amongst all those cars,
Well,
and it gets stolen. Then they're missing the drugs that they're supposed to use on an undercover sting.
well,
And is it possible that some whacked out drug dealer has jumped in and not only has he got away with all the drugs, but maybe he killed their DEA agent? Who knows at this point?
who knows?
I mean,
Who
I think
knows?
we need to keep digging into this Christine Rudy because, you know, you're looking at when we look at the video itself, the very end of the one, the shotgun wedding one. Okay,
Yeah. So
look at
yeah.
all the connections. Same bone expert, Dr. Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Same autopsy MD, and that's Steyer, Michael Steyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got the kerf marks, the bone cut marks on both girls' bones. Both of them are supposedly, according to the stories told, shot in the head. Both of them are dismembered. Both of them are burned. Both of them are dumped in separate locations. All the bones in both cases are so fragmented and tiny that it's hard to even identify the victims.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't something that should occur twice in the same decade, let alone 12 days apart.
That's the worry. That's the worry. Yep. Yep, for sure. Oh, somebody asked about the dogs. I don't think they were narcotics dogs. I think they were cadaver and bloodhounds.
And scent.
Sent her to jail.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was reading Michael's thing. Michael said he made her be a CI, and when family no longer able to pay, he had her sent to prison. That was that girl, a different girl, right? Michael, who are you talking about that they did that to? Because I know there was a girl that they say that Michael, that Rubberducky and them do that too.
Yeah, I've heard that account too. I'm not
Yeah.
sure who it was supposed to be about.
I have not read paperwork on it, but I have heard about it. Different girl. Okay, yeah. All right, guys. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I know we're at like a really high level of people right now, a lot of viewers, and I hate to cut us off at this moment, but we're nearing 10 and I have to work tomorrow, and I still would like to have some chance for you guys to join us to where you can do a couple things. Thank you, Michael. I greatly appreciate it. Anything you
And
can help
please
me
try
on
and come
comment, I
into
would greatly
Discord.
please. And if you can't do Discord, tweet me and we'll talk. And yeah, I greatly appreciate you doing that. But
Excellent questions. Excellent questions.
yeah, you guys are amazing. I hate to even call you listeners because you're very, very active, and that's great. So you're more like participants and supporters. And I hate the word subscribers because you're not subscribing, you're supporting. So I hate the word confession because it's usually a coercion. There are some words out there, root words that kill me. But on a good note, you guys, if we are able to continue into this research on Christine Rudy, we might get some serious answers that we've been looking for. So I have a personal request. With me being as close as I am to the location of the Rudy case, I'm able to actually go there and interview the locals that were in questioned by the detectives, people that actually knew Christine Rudy personally, that knew Sean Rudy personally. I can do all this, and I'm willing to do it. But I need you guys to keep sharing this stuff. Keep me in the limelight here in the sense of, for lack of better words, keep me so that you guys can see me, because it's your protection of everybody knowing I show up, I do my chat, I'm still alive, I'm still doing good. Keeps me safe, and it also keeps Brendan and Steven safe. And I want to thank you guys for doing that. So let's keep digging into the Rudy case. We basically have identified her as done a little victimology. We've compared some results on the DNA testing. Thank you, Dr. Silkman, for that. That is wonderful.
Pleasure.
And Michael Ryan says hashtag Dr. Silky Rocks.
Yes, he does.
I try my best.
I want to send out some special thank yous. One to Zoe, because Zoe works very, very hard on this case.
And she never gets to be on the lives with us.
She's kind of the wind beneath our wings a lot of the time. She'll research every minute she's not working. She'll sleep on the channel if you let her.
Yeah.
Then I want to send out a special thank you to Lily, because she's out there roaming around, getting us current events and bringing them to the room and sharing them with us and keeping us in the loop of new evidence that comes to light. And then also to Sammy, who is a huge moral supporter as well as investigates the case with us. These are the individuals that aren't always able to come on to the room.
Yeah, wake up at 4 a.m. to go do their job and can't make it here, and that live in Slovenia and have opposite hours of us and work at night while we're asleep. And
so hats off to all of you. And then just a real quick note, if you guys, if any of you believe in, I guess, how do I put this? In divine or in spirit or in anything above yourself, I will tell you something. When we jumped into the Christine Rudy case, and I want to say thank you to Dr. Silkman for kind of bringing that to light and getting us interested in the case.
Pleasure. Thank you.
We jumped onto a live and we decided to just wing it. Dr. Silkman said, yeah, I'll do a live with you. You want to do it sometime in the afternoon or whatever? I'm like, how about in 20 minutes? He was like, oh, all right. Let me grab my coffee and bean pizza and we'll go. Well, we do the live and then we get done with the live and we go back to Discord and come to find out without even knowing it. Well, we should have known it because we had seen the date. It happened to be the victim's birthday, Christine Rudy's birthday, that all took place on.
We had looked at it all day long and hadn't even realized.
Never even dawned on us that was the exact same date that we were working on it. Also, we're going to be showing some videos. We did get some interviews. So now that you guys are familiar with Christine and it'll make more sense now, we'll slowly start bringing out some of the interviews with the locals, as well as some of the actual photographs. I have a video I'll be sharing with you guys that you're going to just die laughing at. One of our RD researcher volunteers decided to go with me on the Christine Rudy investigation, and it was one of many that we'll be doing. Anyway, we saw some dogs up ahead in the road quite a ways away, and she said, oh, I'm going to go drive ahead and look at that. You want to go? And I said, you know what? Just leave me here on the corner and I'll grab some screenshot or, grab some shots, some photos for the channel, as well as I'll do some live footage, not live, but footage. Well, she kind of got lost and I'm there for 15 minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm stranded and I'm on the road where it's 2 miles away from where Christine was dismembered. And if I go the other way, it's about 3 miles from where she was shot in the head. So I'm on the road, and you guys, it's probably one of the most embarrassing moments, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys coming up in the next few weeks because you're going to get a kick out of seeing me freak out, hearing me freak out anyway. But it all ends well. I'm home. I'm safe, all that. And we have a lot coming forward on the comparisons now that we know that we're dealing with two victims if they were back-to-back victims by the same killer. So start digging. Yeah, we need people to help us. We want to dig more into Barb, find out exactly what they had on Barb. I want to dig more into the Christine Rudy case. There is a lot of information on the Christine Rudy case, actually. We've really pulled out. There's autopsy reports. There's also a 300 and I want to say 50-some page CASO report, but it's actually Clark County's CASO report. So it's not Calumet County, it's CASO report because it's Clark County. I'm going to try to FOIA that. We'll be doing that in the next few weeks, seeing if we can get it. Might take us months to get. But there's too many coincidences, and that's a bad word, I know, to let it go, though. So
can I just make a closing remark as well?
Please do.
In the Teresa Halbach case, we've got two very, very important samples that need to be worked out. CX, which is the blood found at the quarry, and also there was blood on the, believe it or not, on the door handle of the RAV4. That
you're going to kill me with this because every time you tell me this, I just shake my head.
Yep. So Colhane started doing a DNA extraction from the blood that was on the door handle of the RAV4 and said she couldn't get a profile and didn't go back to retest it.
And there's blood on that. We've shown it in our videos even. You can see it. And it's
so therefore, wouldn't it be interesting to get a DNA profile from Sean Rudy?
Yes, and compare it to CX. Corey.
Or even Heather.
Yep.
Oh
yeah.
Think of that, you guys. Heather Tisler, the mistress in the case,
her jacket,
was there for when Christine Rudy was shot. She helped get the body in the car in the back seat. She helped. She was there when the body was cut up and dismembered. She was there when the body was burned, and she also was there when it was thrown off a bridge and helped find the bridge to do it to dismember and throw the body over. She got 9 months in time, and then she got 18 months worth of probation. Anyway, on her coat was blood on her coat. So, of course, they tested and they compared it to Christine Rudy's DNA sample, and it was not a match. It actually matched an unknown female. So I would love to get the DNA results from the blood on
The
Tisler's.
jacket. Yeah. And maybe, I doubt it if Tisler's blood is there, but that would be nice too.
Well, it's not hers either.
Uh,
It wasn't
by the
even
way,
in the case. It
yeah.
was
By the
somebody
way,
cut
guys,
off.
CX is a male, unknown male.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Did they ever see if they got a whole profile on him?
They didn't say. No,
Okay.
they didn't say. But wouldn't that be interesting? Because they should do a DNA profile on Sean and put him in the CODIS database.
Yeah.
And one of the obvious things you do is you run CX through the FBI CODIS database.
And get a hit.
Well,
That
wouldn't
they
that be
found out it was
interesting?
Sean Rudy. Okay, I'm, it's just Ducky here. You know how I do. I'm just
Yeah.
walk through a pretend. Okay, you guys, if they ran that through and found out it was Sean Rudy,
Oh,
what
God.
benefit would Manitowoc County or the state of Wisconsin have had to announce that? They could have simply used the double murder. Well, it would have been triple if you the unborn child would have been a triple murder. What benefit would it have done to bring up that Sean did both girls? No, here's what could have happened in that scenario. They find out that CX matches Sean Rudy in that big. Then they're like, okay, hang him for the one murder so that he gets life plus 10 plus 18. And then let's use the other one and frame Stephen with the exact same scenario. Let's see what we got to do there. Well, let's make a burn pit by his garage. Let's make it sound like he cut her up right in his own garage. Oh, that sounds like what we have in the other case. Sure. Oh, let's say he moves her body all over hell. Oh, okay. Let's do that. Yeah, we have that.
Well, they actually had a precedence. So it was all there.
Precedence.
Yeah, they had a precedence. So it was all there.
Yeah.
Well, and
right?
Christine Rudy's case was not something that nobody knew about. It went on CNN. It went on national news.
It was in all
Grace
the
did a whole thing.
newspapers.
I think what happened to us is because both girls were killed exactly the same way, and Teresa Halbach was being talked about, Christine Rudy was being talked about. I think in my mind, I don't know about others, I thought possibly, I'm not sure what I remember, but is it possible I thought, oh, Christine Rudy must be somebody in the Halbach case. You know, I'm not sure I understood it was two separate murders then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as Mike Halbach would say, that would be a big mess, wouldn't it? Oh, that gave me creepy, like, no, that would be a big mess if we found out that Sean Rudy killed them both. You bet it would be.
Yeah. So, I'm almost tempted to do another little video on CX and that blood because, whew,
Well,
Well,
Teresa was photographing. Oh, how weird, you guys. I just thought of something else that gave me creeps. Teresa photographed Sheck and his wife was, you got it, very pregnant.
oh, God.
What if that's how somehow it was all about the drugs and the pictures of the pregnant women? I don't know. I'm not going to go there. I'm just saying. Just weird. Just got to think on that.
Well, it's funny because in the Sean Rudy case, you have a love triangle, don't you?
You got it.
Yep.
You got electronics burnt in a burning barrel pit. You got the body being put in a barrel, which they call a trash can, but it's a big barrel that they put out in the water with her torso. Yeah. Yep. We're going to have to start really digging on this.
I just hope I end up doing another video. Oh, this is so scary.
I know it is. Hey, here in Australia, we're right here. We're right
It does.
smack of it where I look in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Sheila, I know my brain. I should be a, what do you call that, a Stephen King writer, you know, write those books. I could write 1,000,000.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, it's that time. We're going to say goodnight. I want to thank all of you for joining us. And it was a great Friday Night Live. We'll do it again next week. This week, we're going to dig in, do a lot of research. So there won't be a mini MaM and there won't be a movie on Thursday. We're taking a reprieve to get more of our ducks in a row. We would rather present to you a well-finished product done properly, where the research has been double-checked, triple-checked, and has sources, rather than just keep following the timeline. CASO will be on schedule as always. Thank you guys so much. And you never know, we'll probably do a live sometime next week if something comes up. If the state does answer, which I don't think it'll be anytime soon, from my understanding, I've heard a couple people suggest that they have until July. So
I've also heard they have indefinitely.
Oh.
So maybe in 20 years, they'll get around to it.
The circuit court, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
even know what to do with that. All right, thank you guys so much. And it's
Thank
time,
you.
you guys. If you didn't do the
Didn't
crime,
do the crime, you shouldn't
Shouldn't
do the
do
time.
thank you guys.
Thank,
Have a wonderful night.
thank you. Pleasure.